I make a lot of videos about Nigel Richards' incredible feats of Scrabble brilliance on this channel, and in the game you're about to see, he makes his usual complement of next level strategic plays. He also makes a stunning blunder that proves he is indeed a flesh and blood human being like the rest of us. But what happens after that makes this game truly remarkable. It's the 2010 North American Championship, where Nigel is looking to become a two-time champion after winning in 2008 and narrowly coming in second the previous year. Going into round 9 of the 31-round event, Nigel's 7-1 record places him in a 5-way tie, with veteran expert Mike Barron holding the best tiebreaker. Mike is the author of the Scrabble Word Book, a popular resource for aspiring players looking to master the dictionary, as well as the Cheat Sheet, a one-page list of essential words that new players often use to get started. He's been rated in the top 100 players in North America for most of the last 40 years. Mike has the first move in the game and has a welcome sight in the form of an opening bingo, which he quickly plays. On the other hand, Nigel has some clunky consonants, a problem he immediately fixes with bitmap for 24. Mike draws more good bingo tiles with the exception of the J and U, and he dumps them both with je for 16, also blocking the two best bingo tiles on the board in the E and S. Nigel's next draw is much better, and with bingos in many locations, he picks his top scoring option of paltrier to even the game. Mike answers right back with his only bingo of demoting to retake command, and Nigel draws the first blank. He can play Bevatron for 68 points here. Instead, he plays his only other playable bingo of Vibrator, a 5-point sacrifice. The board after Vibrator is significantly more difficult to score on than after Bevatron, avoiding placing tiles in open space and slotting a V in a very defensive spot. Engine analysis suggests that Mike averages 28 points per turn after Vibrator and 42 points per turn after Bevatron, more than making up for his 5-point sacrifice. Mike takes his top scoring and best play of Woof for 30, even though it makes a powerful S-hook without an S in hand. Nigel's next draw is vowel heavy, and rather than something like Obia, he plays Raya for 12. Perhaps feeling that Mike might be likelier to have an S after Woof and wanting to obstruct the hook. Mike again takes his top scoring option of Zin, by far his best move here, and Nigel finds himself down 60 without an S on an increasingly ugly board. So he plays Admin to reopen some space along the upper left side of the board. Next, Mike might normally play something like Fave or 5 off of the F of Woof, scoring decently and keeping strong bingo tiles. But at this game score, creating such a damaging hook without at least holding one in reserve is too risky. Instead, he goes all out on defense with Cave for just 9 points, blocking off the I and A of Raya as well as crippling the S hook on Woofs. Nigel knows after Cave he has to continue to open more space, and he plays Toke to do just that at the bottom of the board. Blocking the E of Toke will be difficult for Mike to do while also scoring well. Mike draws flexible tiles, and sensing that he's close to a bingo, he makes a key mistake. Perhaps conflating Celosia and Celesta, he plays Silesia for 63. It's not a word, and Nigel challenges it off. This is a big break for him, but his tiles are still quite poor. Normally, a move like Utopia would be sorely tempting here, immediately correcting the vowel imbalance on his rack. Instead, he makes a very sharp play here of Fooey for 25. Remember, Nigel knows all 7 of Mike's tiles now, and he can see that after Utopia, Mike would have the option to play Calipes as a valid bingo for 76 points. Not only that, Nigel knows that Mike doesn't have the Q or X on his rack. And after Fooey, he has 3 chances to draw either one of those tiles and score extremely well in the spot he's just created. It's a classic stroke of Nigelian brilliance. After his mistake, Mike rebounds with his best move of Ray, balancing his rack and partially blocking the bottom of the board. Nigel answers with a stylish response of his top-scoring move, Out By for 27 through disconnected tiles, taking his first lead of the game and again keeping an eye in case he draws the Q or X. Mike draws a second S and sheds one with Saw for 20. The The big scoring spot is still open after this move, and with the game score so close, Nigel decides that it stayed open long enough, and he blocks it with door, again taking a narrow lead. Although the game is now extremely tight, Mike decides that Nigel's move of door is alarming enough that he needs to block the E of toke, which he does with gi. Trailing by just 1 point, Nigel has the unplayable aerials on his rack. Here, he makes another extremely good play. Realizing that he has the final 2 A's of the game, he plays La forming Za for 13 points. This sets up the ala hook, which Mike won't be able to use unless he has the second blank. Not only that, the vowel-consonant balance is heavily weighted towards consonants, with only 2 vowels left that even play alongside the L at all, so using the newly opened triple will be extremely difficult for Mike. With 3 vowels in reserve, Nigel's much likelier to make use of it. Once again, Mike opts to sacrifice points on the scoreboard to play defense, extending La to Cella to take out the A hook. However, this floats some valuable letters into space, especially the E. And Nigel's drawn one of the most versatile bingo racks in the game. He has 8-letter words through all of the newly opened letters. With a slew of options that score 74 points here, he first places Therians on the board. Then he looks at it and carefully changes his move to hairnets for the same score, hitting his clock to end his turn. There's just one problem. He overlooks that he's placed the A and I of hairnets in the wrong order, spelling the non-word hyarnets. This is an absolutely golden opportunity for Mike to seize control of this game, with the score still essentially tied. But even more shockingly, Mike does not challenge the word. By rule, once your opponent has drawn at least 1 tile from the bag after their previous play, the window for challenging a word is over. Even though Mike eventually notices the misspelling midway into his next move, by then he's powerless to do anything about it. So, what happened here? Remember, this is Nigel Richards we're talking about. There are only a handful of recorded instances of Nigel ever playing a phony word across thousands of games, all of which are errors in tile placement as opposed to misremembering a word entirely. In Mike's shoes, it would be perfectly understandable to look up, see Nigel play Therians, and then look down at his score sheet and start tracking tiles, assuming that if Nigel does rearrange his tiles, it'll surely result in another valid word. Not only that, but according to Mike's own word book, retinas is one of the very first racks to learn on your journey as a competitive player. The idea of the best player in the world playing a phony with this rack defies logic. There is one more amazing thing about this situation. Assuming it doesn't get challenged, hyarnets is actually a better play than the correct spelling. That's because the I is a much more difficult tile to underlap than the A. From the unseen tiles, hyarnets prevents many bingos and scoring plays that hairnets allows, and even prevents Mike from cashing in big X plays in that spot. If you could somehow guarantee that you'd get away with it, hyarnets would be a solid improvement over any other valid play here. Back to the game. After hyarnets, there's 4 tiles in the bag, and Mike has one more chance here with the very tricky bingo of Sin Fuel for 73. But if ever any Scrabble player had a reasonable excuse to be flustered, Mike does after spotting hyarnets on his turn. So he instead plays Fe for 31. With the Q and X both on Nigel's rack, Sin Fuel would have led to a winning endgame for Mike. It's another big break for Nigel, but he's not home free yet. There are 2 spots to bingo, and Mike can easily have bingos in either of those spots. With higher scoring plays like Loxt available, Nigel makes an excellent move here of Oxide for 26, blocking both bingo lanes in one move and ensuring that Mike will not be able to get a final bingo down. After the endgame, Nigel wins 408 to 363. He would go on to capture the championship in commanding fashion with a 4-game advantage over second place Brian Capoletto. Mike ended up in a very solid 15th place in the 116 player field. I've always felt like this game is a testament to the fact that all of us who play Scrabble are human beings. I have a lot of empathy for Mike here. Playing against the GOAT is a harrowing experience, and you'd certainly never expect him to misspell a common word. And as for Nigel, with so many examples of his peerless brilliance, it's a little bit comforting to be reminded that even he is just barely still human as well.